Нижче.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Ola Atamanova, and Ukraine Media Center Ukroboronprom continues its operation today. It's been 9 years of the war, and today is day 386 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian aggressor. And we invited you today to a very interesting presentation. Is the tank shell developed by Ukroboronprom. Our speaker today is Natalia Sad, the spokeswoman for the Ukroboronprom state concern. Good afternoon. So tell us about this shell and let's talk about it. Well, right in front of you is 125mm tank shell, which was manufactured by Ukroboronprom, and we already manufactured for our defense forces. Moreover, we already shipped the first batch in compliance with the agreement entered into with Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. So why this shell is important, the one you see in front of you? Now in the armed forces of Ukraine and in the all defense forces, there is a famine, so to say, famine for the tank shells, and the emergence of this shell is quite significant to us because it allows our tankists to engage in a tank combats, maybe if not in counter-offensive, so at least while holding the defense line. The tank shell emerged in cooperation with one of the countries of the North Atlantic Treaty Organizations, and the manufacturing capacities are outside Ukraine, so it's the second type of munition that we manufacture in cooperation with our foreign partners. For the time being, for us as Ukroboron state enterprise, which comprises more than 100 defense companies, we arrange manufacturing of a number of munitions, 120 and 80mm mortar bombs, artillery shells of a 155mm caliber, and the tank shell, which was awaited in the army for a very long time. As I mentioned, we manufacture it outside Ukraine, but it does not necessarily mean that it's manufactured exclusively by our partners. The employees of that enterprise, in the capacities of which it goes out of conveyor, is being worked on by Ukrainians, Ukrainian turners, engineers, technologies. So going ahead with the question whether we would be able to transfer the manufacturing capacities to Ukraine, yes, we will be able to do it. We will recreate the manufacturing cycle for this shell, and for the time being, the safest variant for the employees of the defense enterprises is to stay outside Ukraine without putting in jeopardy the lives of people whose life and health is the biggest value for us, and thus we also reduce the risks of our defense enterprises being targeted by missile and rocket strikes. But those are the losses that we bear as the state military industry complex on a daily basis. So the emergence of this shell again is very significant, because the tank shells like this, which could be used by tanks of the Soviet era, which are in the ranks of Ukrainian armed forces, T-64, T-72, T-80, they use 125 millimeters caliber shells. For NATO, it's the 120 caliber standard, so their shells don't suit our tank brigades. So again, this is a very important event for us. So can we manufacture it in necessary amounts? Not yet, but we work on growing of all the capacities for manufacturing of all the ammunition, all types of ammunition that I mentioned today, from mortar bombs that I mentioned today to this tank shell. This is our task within the munitions development program. So what are other developments in our defense industry, and what are your, if you may say about this, and what are your strategic tasks for this year? We continue working on all the types of military material and munitions that are in the ranks of our defense forces. We repair the armored vehicles, armored material. I already mentioned that we pay a lot of attention to repair because very intense fights are going on and the material goes out of order on a daily basis and it should be put back in ranks. So our mobile repair brigades, which work right in the areas of the warfare and are relocated enterprises and are disseminated enterprises. I mean when we split, say, one factory into 4 different assembly points of ready-made products, it complicates the logistics, but at the same time we cope with this challenge too. So we restore the armored vehicles, other types of material which successfully fulfills their missions in defense of our skies. The electronic warfare systems, we repair all of them, we manufacture all of those types, and we supply them to the armed forces of Ukraine. So the shell to which today's briefing is dedicated, we may talk about the emergence of a new types, but unfortunately I cannot tell you more about this because it's a classified information. Everything which is related to the development of new types of military equipment, material and systems, everything is classified information, but those developments are underway. You said about the famine for such type of shells in the armed forces, but you also said that soon we will be able to cover the need in our armed forces. Well, this is one of the matters that we were able to respond to, the deployment of manufacturing of this type of shells within the first type during the independence of, during all the years of independence of Ukraine. We were able to make it, and the way in the direction of getting rid of dependency on these tank shells is in deployment of manufacturing of this type of shells. We understand that this war is for long. I'm not saying about this phase of the war specifically, but our northern neighbor will not go anywhere. The threat will not disappear within years or maybe decades or centuries. So we understand that our army will switch to NATO standards, but those tanks that we have now, they will be supplanted by the Western tanks that start incoming to Ukraine, like Leopards that already started coming to Ukraine, but that supplanting will be happening for a long time. But we have to do the war to fight right here and right now. So deployment of such manufacturing of such shells that are not so easy to find outside Ukraine, to procure them in the necessary amount and to have them supplied to the Ukrainian army. So we approved that solution, we approved that resolution, and we went in the way of development and manufacturing of our own shell. Good afternoon. Valentin Marchuk, Ukroboronprom announced the development of their own UAV. What's the situation about that? Is it used in the battlefield now? We were saying that it already passed successful tests for the time. So what's the situation with it? Yes, the UAV exists, and it's not only one of them. The UAV confirmed all the characteristics that were announced in the mass media, and it performed even better. It was tested in the conditions of electronic warfare, and now it's in the hands of the contractors, so we cannot comment anything in the hands of the clients, and I cannot comment any further. So it's a triple period, so we can enjoy all the results of its operation. Yes, exactly. Well, previously the concern announced the draft law on development of the military material in Ukraine. In what phase is it on? When will it be registered in the parliament? You mean the draft law on the setting military industry complex as the top priority complex? Yes, we worked through this draft law. We were cooperating with the private manufacturers of the military material and equipment, and we submitted all the documents to the parliament, and for what I know it was already discussed in the profile committee, but it's not yet in the session hall of the parliament. But we keep our hand on the pulse, we communicate with our colleagues, we try to become a driver and an advocate for adoption of this draft law. It should help the defense industry complex, which includes both government controlled and private manufacturers, and it will enable us to manufacture more and more equipment so necessary for our army. As to the corporatization of the concern, how the war influenced that process, how can it be useful for Ukrainian military? The reform of Ukroboronprom state concern contemplates transformation of the State Defense Corporation, a group of enterprises, into a modern high-tech defense company which would be capable of responding the modern challenges. The war didn't suspend corporatization. More than 30 enterprises of Ukroboronprom are already corporatized. They changed the form of property from the old inflexible forms of property like state enterprises into limited liability companies or joint stock companies, but the only owner is the cabinet of ministers of Ukraine, who is the owner of the 100% of all the stock of those companies. The process of corporatization is still underway. We continue to corporatize the enterprises which are contemplated, and we await for the resolution of the cabinet of ministers to transform all the concern completely into a corporate. What are the complications? There are no complications in terms of the change of the legal form. We can arrange it in a working regime. It just provides us with a window of opportunities for the future, because corporatization should have assisted to the emergence of a new joint enterprises with the partner countries, the emergence of new types of weapons and equipment. So it really helps. It helps to plan the emergence of such joint enterprises, joint developments with our partners, thanks to the corporatization that is underway. I have another question. It's been more than a year that the full-scale invasion is on. Russia actively attacks our enterprises that are a part of state concern. Do we have any numbers any approximate numbers of the any approximate figure of the losses inflicted by such attacks and how it influenced the manufacturing of such munitions or their development? I know that the Ministry of Economy is aggregating the statistics by they aggregate all the information about the losses and damages. We fill relevant forms from our enterprises, but it's difficult to give you the preliminary estimate of the losses. We don't mention it in the mass media intentionally because it's a work that goes in parallel with the manufacturing processes. So it's difficult to estimate a loss of a manufacturing workshop or just one machine for potential manufacturing of those types of munitions that we were forced to bring outside Ukraine. That amount will be promulgated probably even during the full-scale invasion, but all the works as to the aggregation of that information is fulfilled by the Ministry of Economy. As to the losses, I mentioned that more than 150 times our capacities were targeted. We have certain restriction as to the coverage of the facts of our enterprises being targeted. You don't find this information in the mass media, but it does not mean that this type of damage doesn't happen to us. And I only can say that it significantly influences our manufacturing plants, but we try to adapt to new realities. We try to work with what we have. We try to engage new platforms, new partners for those types of works without whose participation it would take us longer to fulfill those tasks that are being set in front of us by the Commander-in-Chief and the government of Ukraine in terms of our manufacturing plants. So the losses are significant. You will hear the figures somewhat later, but for the time being the situation is such that we're looking for proper solutions under circumstances we are forced to work in. It's clear that Ukraine requires demining. A lot of our territory is mined. So the question is, does Ukroboronprom has any developments in this regard, and how, in your opinion, it can be expedited? Because according to different estimates, it will take decades. Yes, one of the enterprises of Ukroboronprom is a certified deminer, and we researched this issue very thoroughly. We used the support of very talented IT specialists who proposed their solutions in terms of humanitarian demining. As according to the estimates of State Emergency Service, 1/3 of the territory of Ukraine is hazardous for fulfilling works on the land for our agrarians. For example, 174,000 square kilometers, if I'm not mistaken, are contaminated with mines. So it will take us more than 1 year, maybe decades, to make this territory safe and secure. Us, as the enterprise which has a certificate for demining, we try to expedite this matter to the maximum extent possible, because we understand that decades are a very long period for the mining of the territory, and unfortunately during our very press conference the battles are still going on and more territory is getting contaminated with the explosive devices. We already presented, we've even shown one of the new types of diffusing of the explosive devices, so-called pencil, that burns the shell of a projectile, thus diffusing it, or it can be used against a mine too. And it's not the only development. uh, in the range of the products of our concern. We try to engage different manufacturers for development of the diffusers of explosive devices. There was a second phase of the conference of the humanitarian demining initiative. We gathered the farmers who shared their pains, their problems. We engaged potential sponsors who would be of help and support, and the operators of demining activity, and we were discussing the plan how to help the civil population, how to help Ukraine to get the territory demined in the soonest manner possible, and what could be solutions for demining. In short, we're talking about making those demining devices unmanned, because it will help to secure the lives of the people who work with the explosive devices, and to expedite the process, because if a live person walks certain distance within 1 hour, a drone could do that way more efficiently. So we focus on the unmanned devices which could identify explosive devices in the soil and diffuse them. As to the machinery that keeps coming from our partners, from our international partners, you already mentioned one of the specimens, they are leopards. So to what extent the team of Ukroboronprom is ready to the repair works? We understand that they will be a serious challenge for us. How do you catch up with preparing your teams to such challenges? We are in constant contact with the manufacturer of that foreign material that keeps coming to our armed forces of Ukraine and to other defense forces. We will be ready to take up the repair of those machines if such necessity will be identified for our military defense complex. We confess basically the principle that was announced by the Minister of Defense Alexei Reznikov, that all the material that can be restored in the battlefield should be restored there, and some heavier machines have to be transported or relocated to the platforms where they can be repaired with the special equipment. And the heaviest machines that require intervention by the manufacturer should be relocated to the country of the manufacturer of that piece of equipment. So we are interested in helping our army to get capable machines, including foreign armored vehicles, back in the ranks promptly, and we're in contact with the manufacturing countries. We are preparing to cover that piece of work, regardless the huge number of machines that should be put back in the ranks from the Ukrainian parks of Ukrainian machinery. So this work is underway. Thank you for this broadcast. I'm reminding you, dear colleagues, joining us was Natalia Sad, the spokeswoman of the Ukroboronprom, and we continue working for our victory. Appreciate the work of our armed forces. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes.